All right, let's talk about harmony. What is harmony? Harmony is when we play two or more notes together. That's pretty simple. But now we have to organize those notes to make them sound good and to have them fulfill a function as well, right? And normally the function that harmony fulfills is to support the melody. And so what we're going to take a look at today is the chords in a key, which are what we call the key we're going to look at is just a major scale, and we're going to take a look at that scale and the chords that come out of that scale. So when I say the chords that come out of that scale, the chords that are built in tertian harmony in thirds. If we take a look at the C major scale, I've just written this out in letters. The first chord is a C major chord. It's made up of C, E, and G out of the scale of C. Scale of C. Right, that was a good one. Jumping around here. Okay, scale of C. And if I take the 1, the 3, and the 5, I have a C chord. And then if I work my way up the scale, D, F, A gives me D minor chord. E, G, B gives me E minor. F, A, C gives me F major. G, B, D gives me G major. A, C, E gives me A minor. B, D, F gives me B diminished and C. And each of these chords that I play here are in what we call root position. That means the root is in the lowest voice. One, and we would also say like 1, 3, 5, right? 1, 3, 5 of the key in this case. But when we look at the chord spelling, it's also 1, 3, 5. If I'm using D minor, that's the 1, the 3, and the 5. That's the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the chord. Okay. All right. I hope that made sense. So the diatonic chords in the key of C major are C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. And those chords each have a function within the key. So the C major chord, its function is as a tonic. Everything sort of wants to go back to C major. And back home, right? So we call that C major the tonic function. And then other chords also within the key have functions as well. The F major chord functions as the subdominant chord. The 4 chord is called the subdominant chord. Now, I've done another video on this, digging in a little bit deeper, but suffice to say for this session, the 4 chord is a subdominant, the 5 chord is a dominant, and the 1 chord is the tonic. But the thing is that there are other functions. Those are the only 3 functions that we're talking about right now. And those 3 functions are fulfilled by other chords in the key as well. And that's what we're getting to today. We're talking about the functions of tonic, subdominant, and dominant being fulfilled by more than just the 1, the 4, or the 5 chord. Okay. Now, if you, I don't know where you're. Obviously, I don't know where you're at. This is a YouTube channel, and you could be in a totally different place. But if you don't know this, it's going to be something you're going to have to know. It probably would be especially valuable to you if you were a songwriter, for instance. but it's also equally as valuable when you learn to hear, to hear how these chords function, and when you analyze other songs that have been written and so on. Okay, so this isn't really a lesson about about jazz. This is more a lesson of just the foundations of harmony. Okay. So we have three functions: tonic, subdominant, and dominant. The C major falls in the category of tonic, the F falls under the category of subdominant, and the 5 falls under the category of dominant. The dominant wants to go back to the 1. The 4, can go either back to the 1, or it can also go to the 5, where it wants to be resolved back to the 1 again, right? Okay. So now, I'm sure you've all heard the term relative minor. So a relative minor to the key of C, or to the chord of C, is A minor. Let me get a groove happening here. There's relative. And they're said to be relative because they're so closely related, right? The chord of C has a C, E, and G in it, and the chord of A minor has an A, C, and E in it. So the A minor chord has a C and an E in it, the root and the third of the C chord. So they're very, very closely related. So they can be interchangeable, essentially. And we're more on that later. Now, the same thing holds true for the 4 chord. The 4 chord is the subdominant chord, and it also has a relative minor. So the relative minor to the 4 chord, the same deal. You count back 3: F, E, D. 1, 2, 3. Up or up here, F, E, right, D, D minor. So F major and D minor are relative. And F. So closely related. Okay, so it's just F, D minor, G7, C. Okay, so very, very closely related as well, right? These are called like substitutions. Or simple substitutions. Reason being that they sound alike and they're simple. Boy, am I ever clever. So that's that. But now I'd like to just move to the stuff I just covered there. I'm really recapping from other videos. You can grab them, and check that out as well. So now the relative minor of the dominant. So the dominant being the 5 chord, and the 5 chord being G, and the relative minor to that chord being E minor. Right. Yeah. So the same relationship between the G and the E minor. However, let me just read what I wrote here. We have left the dominant and its relative till last because the harmonic lines are slightly more blurred between the relative and the dominant. In fact, if we look at the relative of the dominant, which is an E minor chord in the case of C major, The E, G, and B of that chord spell the top three notes of a major C major 7 chord. So in other words, if I take an E minor chord, here's one here. And the notes of that chord are E, G, and B. Right, and I mean, if I play a larger chord form, it's all still just the same notes, just spread around. So there's a E, G, and B, but the E, G, and B are just the top three notes of a C major 7 chord. Here's E, G, and B. So so they're very, very closely related. E, G, and B. E, G, and B. Okay, so because of that, they don't really. It's pretty difficult to justify a substitution of the E minor chord for the G7 chord or the G major chord. That's not the same with the other two. They will substitute quite nicely, and I don't want to go into in-depth reasons for that. But these are important things. So we've got the foundational chords of 1, 4, and 5, and this is what we're getting at. For those foundational chords, each of those chords has its relative minor. In the case of C, A minor; in the case of F, D minor; and in the case of G, and E minor. However, the E minor in the case of G doesn't really sub right out quite simply for G. However, it does create a completely separate key within the key, and that is within the key of C major. We have the 1, the 4, and the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord, as I said before, C, F, and G. But we also, when we take the relative minors, we have a whole new key, which is A minor, D minor, and E minor. Now this is a big deal. So when you look at a key like the key of C major, and you want to pull more out of that key, you want to get more interest happening out of that key. The first thing to do, harmonically speaking, is to group the tensions as group the tensions, period. So you have C, F, G7, C, and that's tonic, subdominant, and dominant. And then you have the relative minors. And so it's the same deal there. Tonic, subdominant, dominant in the key in the minor key. It won't act as a dominant in the major key. And okay, so 1 chord in A minor, the relative minor. 4 chord in A minor, the relative minor of C. Right, and then E minor is the 5 chord in the relative minor key of A minor, and then back. So not only do you have 2 keys harmonically speaking, and there's just a ton of stuff that begins to happen with that. Like for instance, here I've written a chord progression. Just there's hundreds of them, of course, but I've written one here with in the key of A minor. So we have So that progression is in the key of A minor. But if you're doing anything melodic, or if you're soloing over it, if you're writing a melody over it, whatever the case is, you're going to use the same notes that the chords came from, and those notes are the key of C major, the notes of a C major scale, right? But if you take the notes of that C major scale and you simply make them start that scale on A, then there's your relative minor scale, right? That's all there is to it. And as you can hear, it's a totally different sound. Right. Okay. Right? Yeah. So you've got a completely different sound there that's going on. It's no longer a C major scale. So the question is, same notes, so must be the same key, right? No, wrong. It's one is in the key of C because the relationships between the notes. In the key of C, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, and in the key of A minor, it's a tone, semitone, tone, tone. Completely different relationship of tones and semitones. So we hear scales and we form scales cognitively, but from the tonal center, right? Another topic. Okay. All right. So but we can take all of these chords, these sounds, and we can start to think more. In a very simple way, we can be more harmonically complex, because now all of a sudden the C major scale becomes a scale that has a 1, 4, and a 5, a tonic, a subdominant, and a dominant. But now you've also got a 1, 4, and a 5, also tonic, subdominant, and dominant sound in the minor key. Now we can. I think you get that, and also I'd like to say that the dominant sound that you get in the minor key, as I mentioned, A minor, subdominant, tonic, and then subdominant D minor. The dominant is a very passive dominant. And there's a whole other thing that's going to happen with musica ficta, which we'll talk about later, when historically speaking, we altered that dominance in a minor key to become a seventh or a major, giving us a more satisfying resolution. That's another topic, and that will produce a new scale, which is called the harmonic minor scale, which was created for harmonic reasons. All right, I think that's it. Let me just read what I have at the end here. By thinking in this way, you'll be able to develop progressions with good, solid forward motion. That's what a progression is. When you're progressing somewhere or progressing in your life, you're hopefully moving forward, right? It's the same thing with the chord progression. If you're progressing in the chord progression, it should sound like you're moving forward, right? And that's what these functions will help you do. The tonic, subdominant, dominant functions. What are the tensions, right, that you're dealing with, that you're working with? Remember that the key of C major and A minor, although relative, are in fact in different keys. Also, Always listen for and define your root notes in the chords, thereby defining bass line movement. And the reason for that is so that you can hear the bass lines move. Yeah, right. So if we take, like, let's take this one again. Nice bass line. And so if you hear the bass line, the bass line will imply a whole bunch of stuff. And it's good for your hearing because you start to hear the chords build up from the bass, right? As you move forward, also listen for the top notes of each chord so that you are hearing not only the bass lines, but upper lines as well. And then if you put that together with right, get the idea. You're hearing plurally, if you will. You're not just hearing a bass line. You're not just hearing a clump of notes. You know, that's a real problem. It drives me nuts. Polyphonic instruments, a polyphonic instrument, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. It's like a little choir in your lap, right? And learn to hear that way. Okay, but that's it for today. Man, that was a lot. Subscribe, especially if you do like it, then, you should subscribe. I want to have you back, because this all is going somewhere, I hope. Subscribe. Comments are fabulous, because if you comment, then I know what you need. I know where I'm going. I know what I can give you, what I can offer you, and so on. And all it takes you is just a minute of your time, and I appreciate that. I can assure you that it took me a heck of a lot longer than that to learn what I'm telling you now. Okay, and that's about it. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Make sure that when you come to visit me, that you have a guitar in your lap. Make that and make sure that guitar is tuned to pitch. Right? Get some kind of a tuner that I think I've got one here, and you might be able to see it in the shot. This is one that I've got here in the shot somewhere is a Snark. And it works great, but there's lots of great clip-on digital tuners. I'd advise you to always have a tuner and keep dressing up your tuning throughout your practice sessions. And I hope you include me in some of your practice sessions, because that would be fun. All right, thanks, and we'll see you real soon.